I'm going to discuss with our lab partners for a little bit here about what I call the stacking conundrum. And stacking is just defined as using multiple steps to get somewhere. But there is the issue with the stacking of all those different things that go on. Expansion of stone, contraction of PVS material, Duralay material. Yes, Duralay is almost completely shrink-free, yet when we section it, it does release tension, and then you put it back together with, with more Duralay. Or you send it to the laboratory and it's OEM parts or third-party parts, right? All these things can lead to just a little bit of inaccuracy at every single stage. And then even putting it in the lab scanner, right? There's different processes of scanning full arch models, or whether you use 6 scan bodies at a time, which we know from research leads to a little inaccuracy. There's a little bit of technique in there. And then of course, then you bring it into the software, and then it's the person who is working with those files, registering the files, right? Because you have the scan from the scanner for the implants, for the MUAs. You have a scan of the tissue, which may be a separate scan from the doctor's office, bite, deposing, that type of thing. Again, more stacking, more issues. We know that it works, but the only way we can validate one of those cases is if we have a model to put the copings in, or maybe it's a coping-free restoration. So, but the analog model is now, that's our constant, and hopefully went through all those possible variables and got a perfect model. And then we have the manufacturing, which we'll get to make sure it fits that model. So that's a traditional stacking argument, the traditional methods, and all the things that can happen. And today, you know that we are doing a digital process with a lot of the cases out there in the world. And it's photogrammetry or it's grammetry. I'm just going to focus on photogrammetry because we know that the acquisition is pretty pure, and it's a lot of research showing that, really low micron accuracy. But just the acquisition, just to put those scan bodies in the mouth and wave the scanner around the head, just that action, right? And the scan bodies and the equipment is going to inherently lead to inaccuracy. How old are the scan bodies? Have they been updated recently? Almost all of them have a lifespan. 50 scans with some companies, 100 scans with other companies. Where are you in the life cycle of those scan bodies? And that's just the acquisition. It's tough to make the argument that the stacking in this photogrammetry workflow leads to inaccuracy, right? We know that because of the evidence. Lots of evidence, lots of studies showing that photogrammetry is very accurate. But yet, that original argument of how old are the scan bodies? How many times have they been autoclaved? Did they separate? Some of them are 2-piece, some of them are 1-piece. Some of them have been a little bit damaged, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit of a stacking argument. But then also, coincidentally, inside of the file of the scan body, the actual library, is a gap. They leave a gap in there and disclose it in their studies that there might be a 120 micron gap between the outside of the MUA and the inside of the library. Why? Because things aren't perfect. And so it allows a little bit of a lateral shift just inherently in the library. That is due to a stacking error and the latitude to allow that stacking error. So photogrammetry acquisition, yes, very good. But then after that, let's say we trust it. We're at 3 to 5 microns, something like that. Let's say we trust it, it's good. Then what happens to that after it goes into the software? And then the technician is identifying those scan bodies. They're matching them with a very tricky tissue scan, and then matching all that with fiducial markers, bite, setup, pre-op setup, opposing, those kind of things, and that whole stacking inaccuracy. Let's just say that's inherently wrought with the possibility of having some inaccuracy. And then, just like the analog process, you're going to go into the manufacturing, and then you're going to have the inaccuracies of manufacturing. I don't mean to be, the guy that brings all the bad news, But this is the conundrum of stacking. So let's go from the acquisition to the manufacturing, because manufacturing also can be wrought with variables, with issues, such as the milling strategy that the laboratory tech is using, right? Every case has its own little milling strategy, and you have to be pretty good at it to tell the tool what to do, because you have a software that says, I have an STL file, but you have to tell the CAM how to actually mill it. So that's a strategy. And then it has to be done just right to make it work. But then there's also all the variables of where does zirconia come from? What is their shrinkage factor? What is the hardness of that material? What about the tooling in the equipment? How old is the tooling? How old are the tools, the mills, the burrs? Do you have the right burrs? That type of thing. And then, of course, after it comes out of the mill, let's say it's perfect. You still have to go through sintering, right, which is a science in itself. And then the human has to work with that actual product. Sintered, beautified, adjusted, and then, of course, at the very end, the big conundrum, there's no model, right? For a lot of this digital workflow, there's no model. So we do these model-free restorations, all right? And what happens with a model-free restoration? There's no way to really verify it. So the mouth is the ultimate validation of whether it was a perfect production from acquisition to manufacturing. And the only way to really tell is use your fingers, use a 1-screw test or a 2-screw test, right? A 1 screw, or perhaps screw everything down and take a bunch of x-rays and see if you have no gaps, right? So a little bit of science, but not the most scientific approach to making sure that you have a true passivity, because really anything more than almost zero is impassive. And then you have pull. You're either pulling an implant up or you're pulling a prosthesis down. And I think one of the great unknowns out there is the actual breakage factor in full arch dentistry. There's no reporting, it's not required, you just make another one. So the percentages, I think, are a lot higher than what you might think and what you might hear out there. So what's the great neutralizer? Again, it's this passivity plus. Whether it's an analog process, whether it's a digital process, that's the great neutralizer from acquisition to manufacturing. Put the passivity plus coping in. You'll see it in the video. The coping actually self-settles on every single multi-unit abutment. You put the screws in gently, you let it sit on all the multi-unit abutments, and then you just systematically tighten the screws down, and you'll feel a little tactile feel because there's a little cold weld inside of there. Tactile feel. The little housings, the little loose copings settle on all the multi-unit abutments. The cold weld happens on all of them, and poof, you're passive. It's kind of like magic, and it should overcome all those variables that we just talked about. Passivity Plus, it's a great product.